because, you know, obviously that challenges the authority of the political system that they were trying to establish. And, you know, like I asked earlier in the semester, for those of you who share a bedroom with a sibling, you know, it's like, how do you set up your bedroom, right? And what happens when your sibling puts something of theirs on your side or rearranges? Many of you agree, it leads to some degree of conflict. Now, you're unlikely to kill your sibling. Hopefully you don't do that, so you devious smiles. But I'm sure, just like myself, many of you have swung on your siblings at least once, okay? So it's pretty common when even people who are related, sometimes they can have an issue and they lead to violence. So people who are not related, it's very likely. And that doesn't mean that it's okay. I'm just saying, for the sake of the camera, that's what happened. Okay. We're already looking at some of the laws down there. We'll just skip on ahead. Okay. Part of the reason it became necessary to settle the West, so as we talked about the railroad going across Canada, was because the people who were in Canada were legitimately scared that the people who were in America, I guess by this time they're now Americans, they're separated from the British Crown. They were worried that the Americans would start invading territory north, so in order to protect their own boundary, you know, they had to expand across as quickly as possible. A lot of migrant labor was used to build that railroad. I remember reading a book, unfortunately I don't remember the name, but really good book when I was a kid about a young boy who came from China to work on the railroads because that was one of the only places that was paying good money. And that book also looked into themes of, you know, the head tax that was placed on Chinese citizens in Canada back in the day. Anyways, First Nations individuals have been living on this land for, you know, thousands of years, easily 10,000 years, but many of them were nomadic. So what that word means is that many of them did not settle in one spot like we do, right? Like you all, generally speaking, go back to the same house every day. Maybe you have some sort of schedule fitted out with your living arrangement. Okay, it's very unlikely that you just go to a new house every day, or every month you live in a different house, right? So nomadic people don't stay in one spot. Many indigenous tribes followed the herds of buffalo or whatever animal they were hunting, which means that for anyone passing through a certain area, it's hard to tell who lives there if they're not always there all the time, right? Whereas your house, I mean, you probably don't know your neighbors, but your neighbors have a rough idea that you live there, not them, okay? Anyways, as the now Canadians start settling the West, they're again running into resistance, different indigenous groups. Maybe there's violence, conflict, bloodshed, but there's also signing of treaties. Many indigenous chiefs may have thought that it was necessary to sign those treaties for the survival of their groups as well. So many of them might have done it willingly. There was also treaties signed prior to Confederation as well. The British North America Act dealt with indigenous people as well. There's another one that I'm slipping my mind right now. But anyways, these new treaties set the precedent for the Indian Act, again, which was formed in 1876, so this shortly after the Canadian government becomes official. They start signing treaties between 1871 and 1921, so again, that's pretty recent. Like 100 years is not that long, right? How many of you have grandparents that are older than 75? How many of you are awake? I'm just checking who's sleeping. This guy's passed out. That's what happens when you eat pasta, kids. I don't know what he ate, but he's also knocked out. That guy's knocked out as well, and that guy as well. No way, I'm so boring I put you to sleep. But I put the fear of God back into those two because they're awake now. He's pretending to be asleep now. Okay. Also, another benefit, and this was already kind of vaguely discussed, this bridge. If you have a railroad, it makes it very easy to send troops back and forth across the country, right? So again, if there's an invasion by the Americans, or if some indigenous groups start revolting and there's an uprising or some conflict, it's very easy to say, hey, send 30 soldiers on the next train 9 a.m. in the morning, get them out there by noon, and we're going to solve this problem, right? And for the record, fun fact before we finish the lesson today, Hitler also made sure that the first thing he built with his public projects was highways. Now, people didn't see 10 years into the future that he was building those highways so he could move troops around the country very easily later on, right? So these means of transportation are very useful for the military as well. Okay, we'll wrap up with that.